This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Daniela Bumann on the show. She is the author of a book called Gliding You Home and another book that we're going to talk a little bit about, which is her first book, High Performance Without Pain, and the products that come along with that book, because there's definitely some there. But also, we're going to talk a lot about why she got into coaching and helping people boost their productivity and help them build their mindsets and improve boundaries, because I think boundaries are super important for leaders today. Anyway, with all that being said, Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be part of your show today, John.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into all this.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Switzerland. And basically, I'm a curiosity that didn't kill the cat just yet. But when I grew up in Switzerland, I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs. Both of my parents were passionate entrepreneurs. They really enjoyed doing their own thing and connecting with people and building a business simultaneously. And so I really had, if we are diving already into the High Performance Without Pain book, really had that background of watching parents trying to be high performers and burning themselves out to a certain degree. Now, to kind of backpedal a little bit there, what happened was from my early age, John, I felt very passionate about life, and I would just look around me and go, how come people don't get what's happening here? It's a pretty amazing place we live on. Now, with that said, I'm not saying I'm wearing rose-colored glasses. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we have an incredible innate potential that we often don't use. And I also saw folks walk about in a very automated way oftentimes, through programming. The parents did this, so I'll do this. Mom did this, or dad wants me to be a doctor, or, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so that to me was really not something that I was going to do. And I felt like that was a paradigm that I wanted to break out of at a fairly early age already, to really direct my own course. And so at a very early age, then into my teens, I started reading all sorts of self-help books. And then I fell in love with an older man. And this older man had written some books. And when I was reading those books, I was highlighting them because these books really talked about the power of your thinking and how you can direct your destiny and your way of contributing and be of service, living your full potential. Now, facetiously speaking, I fell in love with this man, with this author. It was Norman Vincent Peale. The power of positive thinking.
Yeah.
And so that kind of catapulted me into this world of, okay, what do I do with all this now? And being a possibility thinker that's quite pragmatic and simultaneously very spiritual, exploring both territories.
Interesting. Yeah. So, when it comes into getting into that space and being able to relate both like the pragmatic business side of high performance and leadership and things like that, but also relating it to your spiritual side, how do you go about that?
Well, I think for me, I have in many ways always been quite left and right brained. right?
Okay.
And in having been having grown naturally into becoming a coach with my own method of coaching, what I started to see, John, and then I heavily got into communication styles and behavior modification, which I think is just absolutely fascinating still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
How can you improve how you communicate, how you can create greater productivity, greater intimacy, greater, it's just fascinating to me. So what I started to realize, though, in reference to your question, is that many folks, particularly high performers, were stuck on one side of the brain, and that was the logical part. And they were not shifting gears. They were not tapping into the other part of the potential. Now, we're not going to make a left brain person necessarily a right brain or the other way around. However, we can become more balanced. So the tools I started to develop, John, were tools that would help folks from different walks, whether they were high executive functioning folks to a teenager I was working with, to really help to tap into the entire brain from the left to the right hemisphere, to start to create a bridge so they can at least start to meet each other someplace in the middle. And from that place, then create what I call the power center. And once you're in your power center, you can start to mindfully, compassionately set boundaries, because suddenly you're not just viewing things from one or primarily one perspective, but you have a plethora of influences that you are allowing to come in from which to sift through.
Mm-hmm. So how do we know if we're in that power center?
Well,
like, what are some indicators that say we're there or we're not there?
Right. So, John, when do you feel that you are the most grounded and centered?
Oh, that's a tough question. I feel like I'm most productive in the morning. I don't know if that means the same thing or not.
Okay. Like in the morning, right? So,
yeah.
Right. So we all have, generally, when you are in your power center, you are tuned in and turned on, just like the light, right? Okay. You have to plug it, you have to plug the plug, it's charged, it's charging, right? When we're not in our power center, oftentimes we are a little bit all over the place. It's like the airspace, right? We're a bit scattered, we're trying to pursue, everything simultaneously.
Yeah.
Or we're not really honing in on what is it really that I am wanting to do? What is essential at this point in my life, where you start to live and direct your life from the seat of your soul versus just from the monkey mind or the part of our more primitive part of our brain that likes to hold on to all these different thoughts of what looks and sounds exciting. So when we work and we develop tools to move into our power center, it allows us to simmer down our nervous system. It allows us to unwind, where we can start to look at our ocean, when it ripples out from a calmer perspective, where we can see the pebble actually go down versus stirring it up, which is oftentimes what we do. And then we don't really live from our power center. We pretty much live a lot more from what we think we ought to be doing, from conditioning, from obligations, right? Then we live a lot more from that space versus when we drop into our power center, whether that is through meditation, mindfulness meditation, activities that help to ground and center the physical vehicle, the body temple, and or then also help to direct the mind in a way that serves your highest goal, not just your fleeting aspirations.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned children, you mentioned all these things about being busy. And that's one of the things when we are high performers, we get super busy. We get caught up with things. And then it's almost like we're rushing from work to take our kids to sports, to, make dinner, to clean up dishes, and to get them in bed. And then, we got to start over again. How do we take the time to actually stop, settle down, and think grateful thoughts and center ourselves and have that ability?
Right. So what happens is oftentimes, of course, particularly a more high-performing individual generally is working against oneself in many ways. The race against time, right? Mm-hmm. The race literally against time. Like you're just saying, there's the kids, there's the wife, there's this, there's that, However, when you start to view your life as in you are moving more into a flow state where you're moving more into a process where you're working with life, you start to realize that time really is not your enemy. And you start to establish a support structure. And this is where the tools come in, John, where you can live your life from. And your tasking can become more mindful because you deliberately plan it ahead. But instead of just running after, all these obligations, you are including yourself in those obligations, so to speak, taking care of yourself while you are at it. I mean, that's part of the healthy boundary setting, not walls, but healthy boundary setting, where you start to go from go, go, go to slow, slow, slow. So you can actually start to see where you are tripping yourself up, and then moving into a much more mindful tasking where the shift is on the interior. It's not on the exterior. Mm-hmm. Life is life, but you become more internally oriented. So that's where the 7 habits of my first book, High Performance Without Pain, a 7-step blueprint to reclaim your vibrant life and get even more done, comes in, where those habits create an internal structure from which you can then redirect your life despite life or despite your busyness. Mm-hmm. Such as, for example, habit number 1 is presence. Reduce anxiety, pain, and chaos.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
When it comes to presence, I know you have a lot of things on your website that are, in addition to this high performance without pain, you have a workbook, you have daily alignment cards and things like that. When it comes to presence, what kind of reminders can we set ourselves or help ourselves to stop and be present? Because there's so many distractions with social media, with TV, with everything that's going on. Sometimes it's hard to just stop and be present.
Right. Absolutely. So, first, what really helps is, and that's really a main reason why I actually did create because that wasn't the intention at all when I started writing the book. But then I realized my clients need the daily alignment cards because that's going to help them, stop and get what I call a pivot. It's all about that pivot. When you have the one thought that's contrary to really what would be good for you, you pull a card and you are able to then shift that thought through presence. But the main internal shift really happens is to start to realize that everything happens in the present moment. But we often pay little attention to it, hoping to find relief in a future moment. Right? So setting, so that's what I'm saying. There's some internal pivots that start to happen. So setting the intention ahead of time is very important, or doing a daily scheduling of even 3-minute power meditations that help you then recenter and drop from your head, monkey mind, into your heart and body wisdom, and grounding your feet so you can actually become calm, clear, centered, and focused. So it's go ahead.
I was just going to interrupt you for a second. tell me more about this 3-minute power meditation, because I've always thought of like meditations as something that takes a longer time. Well, what are these 3-minute power meditations, and how would one start that?
Okay. So we can actually do one if you'd like.
All right, let's do it.
Yes. So, but to answer the question, that is oftentimes people think, meditation is going to take so much time and it's going to be 20 minutes or a half an hour. I don't have that time. What do you want me to do, Danielle? I don't have that kind of time.
Right. And people think you're going to get bored during it. They think this, my mind's going to wander. Yeah. So tell me about this 3-minute one.
Right. So what happens is, first of all, when you start to set the intention to start to meditate, oftentimes, when you come into a little bit of a greater stillness, the mind is going to pour thoughts into you because finally you're listening. Mm-hmm. It's going to discharge these thoughts, which is very common. But as you continue to ground and breathe, and we can do a small meditation, what happens is it's going to start falling away, and you're going to start to learn how to direct your thoughts, even within 3 minutes, where you can breathe them out and let them go instead of being consumed by them. So oftentimes a 3-minute power meditation can feel like it's a 6 or 7-minute meditation because you are dropping into that still point, into the gap between action and non-action, where you can become attentive to the moment, John, versus reactive to the moment. Mm. So that starts first of all with the breath and finding.
Yes. So we start with breaths. What kind of breaths? Is it like deep breaths, hold your breath, like box breathing?
Yes. So box breathing is very helpful. But if you'd like, we can do a meditation. We can do a small meditation right now.
Sure. Let's do like a minute or so, just so we kind of want to spend all the time where it's silence on our podcast. Might not be good for the listeners, but.
Yeah. So what you'd want to do right now is just kind of lean back, and you want to put one hand on your heart.
Okay.
And the other hand on your belly button.
Okay.
And you simply want to take a deep breath in, a deep cleansing breath in, inhaling all positive energy through your heart. And then as you exhale, release and let go of any and all stress and tension. And then inhaling, intentionally visualizing that you're inhaling calm, grounding energy all the way up through to your head and out. And as you're exhaling, you are releasing and you're letting go of any and all overactivity and tension. So as you're inhaling this calm, you're visualizing this calm, beautiful energy. And as you're exhaling, you're letting it wash away any tension, just like waves. And any and all thoughts and any old thinking that may be disturbing, you're just going to let it wash away, just like waves. No wave repeats itself. Staying very present, practicing to stay focused in this moment. And then picture, as you keep on breathing like this, that you are growing roots out your feet, down into Mother Earth. And you are simultaneously, you can picture yourself in a forest, beautiful spot where you may have hiked at one point. You can hear the birds, the wind. And then as you take another deep breath in, you are breathing that in, and you're cleansing your entire body all the way up to your head. And then imagine with every breath that you are drawing in this beautiful green energy through your head, and it's calming and centering your thinking, your feeling, your being state. And the knowing that present superpower is to disrupt the momentum of anxiety, fear, and distraction by anchoring us in the here and now. It helps us to regulate the past and the future by putting it in its proper perspective. I take it another breath in and just noticing your shoulders dropping, your heart relaxing, your belly becoming soft, and your legs and your feet grounding. And just notice that this is not a place of having to perform, but to simply be. Just notice how you feel the difference. And then you can just reopen your eyes.
Wow. That was definitely like incredibly relaxing and calming. And I can feel my heart rate lower.
All right.
I don't know like what it was about putting my hand on my chest and my stomach, but that definitely made a difference. Because I've done breathing exercises before, and they do calm me some, but visualizing and touching my heart and my stomach made an incredible difference of calming.
Yes. So what is your state of thinking right now different than before?
Before I was thinking of what the next question was I was going to ask you. And now it's more like it's just open. It's almost like I don't have.
Yes, it's open. See? And so when you drop into the present moment, you open to things that you would not see otherwise, you would not hear otherwise, because your senses are tuned in. Not just into your monkey mind, which is the next thing, but your sensory perception opens up, because I work a lot with the senses, right? With the touch, with the feeling, with the visualization. Now, imagine this was just a few minutes, right? Sometimes I have clients, my corporate clients are calling me for 15-minute increments of meditation where we're actually doing a specific refocus meditation so they can go into the meeting and not lose their mind.
Yeah,
right?
For real. I mean,
so
I have to say, like, it's for only 3 minutes. That was just an incredible stress reliever.
Right.
And like you said, my mind is now open. It's not as like
Yeah.
I was focused. Like now I'm thinking back on it. I was focused on my next question was going to be, how did you get to gliding you home? What's the deal with dolphins? And you kind of go down that path. But this just kind of opened up a whole new, realm of relaxation.
Beautiful. Let's call it a new realm of presence, right? Because then when you because there's a difference. There is a difference, John. Like you just said, relaxation is just relaxation. But I asked you, what's your state of mind right now? You said it's more open, right? Because then you can I'll share an example with you. Sometimes when I'm coaching clients, I'm pragmatic and spiritual. I'm very left and right brain. And so sometimes, I have a certain schedule of what I want to do with this client because I'm quite directed and organized, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now I'm working with the client, but in presence, I'm feeling, no, Daniela, we're not going to do this and this and this. This is where it's at. This is the agenda. This is where it's heading. You see? You see? And so I'm able to pivot it and navigate it to, this is what is really essential. And then the client will go, wow, just like you did. This is amazing. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about meditation only right now. I'm talking about the actual coaching process and different things we're doing, right? And so then the client will go, gee, I never thought we were going to go here, but yeah, right? Mm-hmm. And so am I, because I am tuned in and turned on to what is happening in the moment, right? Like I said, everything happens in the present moment. but we often pay little attention to it, hoping to find relief in a future moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think this is. I was just going to say, I think what I hear you saying is that, you know, you need to be scheduled to know what you can do, but present and open so that when, you know, the universe or whatever, the world gives you something, you see it and you can navigate that path and be as flexible and agile enough to, you know, take that.
Amen. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so for me personally, because as I kept on working with creating a flow state, because the first book was also a lot about creating a flow state, which dolphins were telling me about later on. I didn't know that when I wrote the book. The book has really been, the first book was really focused on having coached clients for over 20 some years, and even my own life as a high performer and having experienced a degree of burnout and viral attack, right? That, you know, again, being someone that is passionate and ambitious and driven, I like to say hard focused, though driven. There's a big difference, right? So, you know, to realize, you know, okay, how do I create a flow state from that, right? Again, that's the other part of the brain. And so as I work with these different habits, from presence to, you know, judgment awareness, to acceptance and belonging, compassion and action, habit 5, equanimity and communication, which is great for leadership because that talks a lot about mindful listening, mindful communicating, team building, to the habit 6, curiosity and goal achievement, right? That's in part actually what we're working with right now, John, curiosity and goal achievement. Oh, well, I don't know that I have time for a minute, Danielle. Well, let's do a minute, right? Right. But then we did it. Like, what? Right? That's curiosity and goal achievement. To then the habit 7, which is the patience and transformation of the ego. So, you know, creating more of that flow state from the high performer that's used to the go, realizing how much power there is in the slow.
Yeah. I had someone on probably 2 years ago now that read a book called Slow Down to Speed Up. And it was a similar kind of concept of you thinking and trying to slow down, look at where you're at, look at your surroundings, your presence, you know, be present in the situation. And then you could find the right path so that you're not doing rework, you're not, you know, messing up, tripping over yourself, as you called it. And yeah, I think that's a super cool way to look at things. But let me get back to my schedule a little bit. And just, you know, I don't want to do you a disservice by not talking about. I don't want to do you a disservice by not talking about Gliding You Home and in this last few minutes. If you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about this groundbreaking book and why you put this together and what it's about and what can your readers get out of it?
Sure. So Gliding You Home, A Dolphin Stream of a New Earth, is about unlocking your spiritual potential, right? Mm-hmm. Which we just talked about the other part. And it is basically a practical guide to evolving your consciousness. And it is for personal growth and fulfillment. Mm-hmm. But the book, the way it came about really was I had worked quite a bit with the first book and how to create a flow state. And then, you know, because when you start to create a flow state, you work much more from taking inspired action versus I have to. You know how that goes. I need to, I have to, you know, and there's the agenda. But to taking inspired action creates a different inner state. It creates a different feeling, a different rhythm, creates a different energy. Just like when you came out of, you know, your state was open, right?
100%.
So, you know, working with the dolphin consciousness, within this book, they are really addressing where humanity is at this junction in life, you know, where they talk about the evolution of humanity and what happens when you enter the stream and you start to heal that disconnection from being so connected to the mind and its programming, what we just talked about earlier, right? and moving much more into living in the now and the secret chambers of your being. When you are more in the being, you are more present, which is what we just did. So, the book talks a lot about, like I said, the evolution of humanity, but also how where the world is going, some of these patterns are just no longer working. The patterns of the world, not just our personal patterns, but some of these things are and have been falling apart. I mean, let's take COVID, not to get into COVID per se, but let's take COVID. These patterns, it no longer works, right?
Yeah.
So they get a lot into no concepts, but intention. Like, again, intentional living. When you do mindful tasking, John, you start to do this 3-minute power meditation every day. That's a huge contribution you personally can do by halting your automatic mind or brain and how it's propelling you to go forward, but becoming more intentional. So you can take much more what the dolphins like to call, you can be missioned into action by the call of your soul. And they do talk a lot about that process when humanity really is, as things are falling apart, how it's affected the animal nature kingdom, Mother Earth, through, a force consciousness, through a control consciousness versus the power of love versus the love of power. Right?
Yeah.
So
100%. Well, you have made me a believer in this meditation for sure, and taking steps going forward. So I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to dig into your book as well, which I'll be picking up an audio copy, which I think you narrated. Is that correct?
Yes, I have. Yes.
I think that's awesome. I love it when authors narrate their own book. It makes it so much better when you're listening to it, because you hear it in their voice. You can just tell. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I want to link all that up in the show notes too at a Geek Leader. But how can people connect with you online and maybe learn more about this and maybe engage you for some coaching?
Sure. So I have 2 websites. The first website is vibrantlivingnow.org. And on that website, you can sign up. And then when you sign up, you get actually a summary guide to the 7 habits, by the way. And then there's also podcasts on there, as well as this one will be on there. And there's a coaching page as well. There's a speaking page because I'm a leadership speaker. And because this work is about leadership, John. It is about that next level of leadership, personal leadership. It always starts with the self. And then as you start to work with yourself, you start to project that onto your children. You start to impress that onto your children and all those that you touch. So anyway, so there is workshop and trainings you can hire or book me for. I'm also all over social media, from Instagram to Facebook to, of course, LinkedIn. And the other website that's more of my primary speaking website is DanielaBumann.com. And that's Daniela with 1 L, and Bumann, BUMANN.com. And the other website is info@vibrantlivingnow, and that's .org, not .com. So there's a lot of information on there. I do have a coaching practice in Redlands downtown, because I like to see folks in the flesh still. Mm-hmm. But I work with folks internationally through Zoom or other modalities as well, whether that is somebody simply going through a life transition, John, or they're looking at one area of their life and they're saying, you know what, this no longer works. I need to learn how to become more mindful and meditate and, do that. Or just a corporate leader that is wanting to up level his ability to be more mindful within his own leadership style and within his own schedule, including setting boundaries, right? Because like you started out with, that's a big one. So yeah, I serve, in those capacities, but it always comes back to becoming who you were intended to be, and creating that state, because you are already who you are meant to be. I just assist you in revealing that. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'll link all that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com, so we can click through to your website and book and everything there. Again, Daniela, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for playing along with the meditation, John. And I very much appreciated being on with you today.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.